The garage didn't sound right before I even stepped inside. It was too quiet, too still. The kind of quiet that makes your pulse flick in your throat because something familiar has been replaced by something wrong, something invasive, something violent. The moment the steel door rolled upward, the smell hit me. Gasoline, coolant, scorched rubber, and the unmistakable chemical bite of a trespassing violation. My body reacted before my mind caught up. Breath locked, spine tightened. That old unwanted instinct I carried home from the desert snapped awake like a weapon being chambered. And then I saw it. My $400,000 midnight black Lamborghini. My one reward for surviving things most people can't imagine without trembling. Wasn't a car anymore. It looked like a corpse. A mechanical execution. A message. The windshield was shattered into a web of white scars, collapsing inward like a bomb had gone off in the cabin. The hood was cratered with brutal dents, deep enough to warp the steel frame underneath. The mirrors hung from their wiring like severed limbs. My sanctuary had been slaughtered. Before we move forward, drop a comment. Where are you watching from right now? Because what I'm about to show you doesn't happen in normal neighborhoods. This happens when someone drunk on fake HOA authority decides they want to rule a street like a dictatorship. And that's not even the half of it. My boots crunched across the concrete. Every step was an autopsy. Shards of glass, strips of carbon fiber, pools of leaked hydraulic fluid catching the light like oil-slicked blood. And then I saw it. One bright fleck of neon bubblegum pink caught on a piece of shattered headlight lens. Pink nail polish. Not just any pink. Karen's pink. The HOA stalker who patrolled Maple Ridge Estates like a bored prison guard in a pastel cardigan. The same woman who took photos of my garage door every time it stayed open longer than 20 seconds. The same woman who scribbled citations like she was writing scripture. The same woman who looked at my Lamborghini the day I bought it and let her grin crack just enough to show an old, festering resentment. My jaw didn't tighten. My voice didn't rise. That's the misconception people have about veterans. Rage isn't loud. Rage is cold, controlled, surgical. The temperature inside my chest dropped to something sub-zero as I pulled out my phone, opened the camera feed, and rewound the footage to the exact minute the garage was breached. 2:14 a.m. The timestamp glowed at the bottom of the screen like a warning light. The side door opened, not shaken, not pried, not forced. Opened. Smooth, confident. A detail that twisted something deep in my gut. And then she stepped into frame. Karen Whitmore, HOA secretary, neighborhood tyrant, spreadsheet dictator, the self-appointed warden of Maple Ridge Estates. Her hair was tied back. Her expression was a flat, entitled glare. Her grip on the long-handled sledgehammer was steady, like she'd been rehearsing this moment for years. She didn't hurry. She didn't hesitate. She walked around my Lamborghini like an executioner inspecting the prisoner before the sentence. She placed her palm on the hood, almost tender, almost affectionate, and then raised the hammer above her head with both hands. The camera shook from the impact. The hood collapsed inward with a metallic scream. She swung again, and again, and again. A frenzy of power-drunk satisfaction radiated off her. Not anger, not panic, pleasure. For 20 uninterrupted minutes, she dismantled the most valuable thing I owned. My engineering masterpiece, my peace, my reward for surviving when so many friends didn't. She kicked panels in. She tore off mirrors. She smashed headlights until the housing shattered apart. She didn't even look tired. She looked fueled, renewed. And then, right before leaving, she turned toward the faint reflection of the camera in the garage window. She smiled. A slow, satisfied, twisted smile. And that was the moment I knew this wasn't vandalism. This was a challenge, a declaration of war, a parasite thinking she finally found the one rule she could break without consequences. Here's where everything blew apart. My mind wasn't in the garage anymore. It was back in briefing tents overseas, where the difference between life and death came down to how fast you recognized escalation. This wasn't Karen having a meltdown. This was Karen escalating from citations and clipboard harassment to full-scale home invasion behavior. She didn't break a car. She invaded my safe zone. She stepped into my home with a weapon. She wanted me to feel it. She wanted me to kneel. She wanted to show me what happened when someone refused to bow to her petty HOA empire. That's when the soldier stepped forward inside me. Not the angry one, not the reactive one. The one who knew how to take control of a battlefield the moment someone crossed a line they shouldn't have even approached. But before anyone could call her unhinged, misunderstood, stressed, or just trying to enforce the rules, I wanted the record to show the truth. She didn't just attack a car. She executed a power fantasy, and she thought she'd get away with it because nobody ever stopped her. Not the HOA president, not the board, not the neighbors she terrorized. No one. Until now. I locked the garage door behind me. I took one last look at the destruction, at the broken machine that had been my final bridge between war and peace. And I felt the shift settle into place, like a round snapping into a chamber. She started this. I would finish it. But she had no idea what was coming next. Because in Maple Ridge Estates, HOA Karen had finally picked the wrong house, crossed the wrong line, and taken a swing at the one man trained to answer force with flawless control. And the moment she lifted that hammer, her fate was sealed. I didn't buy the house in Maple Ridge Estates because I wanted neighbors. I bought it because the street was quiet, the nights were long, and the silence felt like something I could rebuild a life inside. After years overseas, I didn't need excitement, I didn't need noise, I didn't need community potlucks or holiday parades. I needed a place where nothing hunted me, nothing exploded, nothing crawled through my walls with bad intentions. For the first year, that's exactly what it was. A fortress of calm. A sanctuary built on routine. Who would have guessed that the real threat wouldn't come from anything foreign or dangerous but from a suburban parasite drunk on clipboard power? Karen didn't join the HOA. She seized it. She slithered into the board meetings, wrapped herself around the bylaws, and crowned herself queen of compliance. Her pastel outfits didn't hide the predator living under the fabric. Her voice was always sweet when she wanted an audience, but her eyes were the real tell. Cold, scanning, judgmental, obsessed with control. She patrolled the sidewalks like a wannabe cop with invisible handcuffs. She timed garage doors. She memorized trash schedules. She whispered to neighbors about whose lawn was failing and whose paint wasn't community standard. And when she found out I was a veteran who kept to himself, her smile tightened just enough to reveal the gears turning behind it. People like her don't fear strength. They challenge it. They poke it. They test it until it reacts. And then they weaponize the reaction. She started small. Micro violations that didn't exist. Grass height. Watering times. Duke's leash length. Each one was an intimidation attempt. A way for her to see how hard she could push before I bit back. But I didn't push. I didn't bite. I let her rattle her cage while I remained still. Veterans don't escalate small conflicts. We've already tasted the real kind. But to a petty tyrant, silence looks like weakness. And she mistook my quiet for surrender. The emotional escalation began the day I brought home the Lamborghini. Midnight black, ceramic coating like obsidian. V10 machine engineered with a kind of precision I respected the same way I respected any weapon that could kill if handled wrong. But to me it wasn't vanity. It wasn't a toy. It was a promise I made to myself in a bunker years ago. If I make it out of here, I'll buy the one thing I've always wanted. It was a tribute to every night I didn't die. A celebration of every mission I came back from when someone else didn't. And the moment that car rolled into my driveway, humming with low, controlled power, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Joy. Real joy. I should have known she'd smell it. Predators always smell joy. Karen's first reaction wasn't admiration. It was territorial rage disguised as community concern. She stood at the edge of my property with her sunglasses reflecting my car, like she was looking at a contagion. "It's beautiful," she said, voice flat enough to cut concrete. "But I'm not sure it aligns with Maple Ridge's aesthetic values." I wiped the hood. Calm. Controlled. "It aligns with mine." That was the first time I saw the crack in her mask. The first time I realized she wasn't simply enforcing rules. She was enforcing her worldview, and anything that shined brighter than her authority had to be dimmed. Her villain behavior upgraded overnight. She started circling the cul-de-sac slowly, camera angled toward my house. She took photos of my driveway. She lurked near my lawn, pretending to check soil moisture. She talked to neighbors with the tone of someone warning them about a threat on the loose. And then the smear campaign began. "He revs the engine too loud. He's showing off. He's unstable for Dean Barum from war. He's aggressive. He's dangerous." She built a mythology around me like she was writing a manual for HOA warfare, but the authority beat always comes back to fact. I had my deed, my federal documentation, my spotless record, my clean compliance logs, and a lifetime of discipline. She, on the other hand, had a clipboard and a fantasy of power. She kept pushing, kept escalating, kept trying to shrink my presence until I fit into the tiny box she controlled. But every time she stepped toward me with her paranoia, I refused to step back. I wasn't loud, I wasn't angry, I wasn't reactive. I was a wall she couldn't move. And that made her furious. Her harassment attempts became more erratic, more frequent, more personal. She was no longer trying to enforce rules. She was trying to break me. And as every week passed, I could feel her circling closer, more desperate, more unhinged, more convinced that my refusal to bow meant she had to escalate past citations into something uglier. And she did. But here's where everything blew apart. The night I caught her staring into my garage window at midnight, smiling slightly, like she already knew how she planned to destroy the one thing that brought me peace. That smile was the warning shot. That smile was the fuse. That smile was the moment I realized that this wasn't just HOA harassment anymore. This was a threat, waiting for a moment to explode. Maple Ridge Estates wasn't a community. It was a kingdom, quietly handed to the worst possible ruler, a petty suburban overlord disguised as a polite neighbor. Karen didn't just sit on the HOA board. She puppeteered it. Every meeting, every vote, every whisper. She wrapped her fingers around the rules and twisted them into whatever shape suited her delusions of authority. The HOA president, Tom, was a decent man, with a spine softened by conflict avoidance. The treasurer cared only about housing prices, and the vice president floated through meetings like he wasn't fully awake. Put those three together, and Karen had exactly what a clipboard tyrant thrives on: weak leadership, blind trust, and a platform to play dictator without anyone challenging her. Her power spread quietly at first. She rewrote trash bin policies. She invented noise restrictions. She extended her surveillance territory like she was drafting a map of land she thought she owned. Neighbors bowed to her because fighting her meant paperwork, fees, and endless harassment. But when she turned her predatory gaze on me, she didn't find someone afraid of bureaucracy. She found someone who had lived through the kind of authority that didn't hide behind pastel sweaters and printed violations. And that made her escalate. That's when everything blew apart. Once the Lamborghini arrived, her obsession mutated into something uglier. Suddenly, every board meeting had a new item titled Community Harmony Concerns. I was the harmony concern. She claimed my car was commercial equipment. She said it undermined family-centric aesthetics. She insisted it was aggressive. I'd seen artillery that was less dramatic than the way she described my parked vehicle. She used her board influence to gather complaints that didn't exist. She told the treasurer the noise devalued homes. She told the president my presence intimidated families. She told the vice president she feared I was mentally unstable because I didn't attend neighborhood events. Every lie she planted was intentional. Villain behavior evolving into manipulation, coercion, and character assassination. But her problem wasn't the lies. Her problem was that I tracked everything with military precision. I recorded every warning, logged every citation, filed every notice she slid onto my door like she was delivering court summons. My evidence folder grew heavier, while her grip on reality grew thinner. The authority beat hit when I reviewed the HOA bylaws and discovered she wasn't just bending rules, she was breaking them. She issued citations without board approval. She assigned fines she wasn't authorized to assign. She used HOA funds to reimburse herself for community patrol equipment. That was a flashlight and a pair of binoculars. Both used to stare into people's windows under the guise of nighttime security compliance. Her surveillance creep behavior intensified. The same week she accused me of unapproved mechanical activity for washing my own car, neighbors began reporting her pacing their roofs with her phone flashlight. She treated the neighborhood like her personal panopticon. The paranoia was mutual. They feared her retaliation. She feared losing control. And I watched from my porch as her nightly patrols changed from simple walks to full-blown stalking sessions. She checked my driveway every night. She timed when my lights turned off. She pointed her camera at my garage door like she expected it to confess something. And every time she failed to find wrongdoing, she grew more agitated, more desperate, more determined to manufacture a reason to strike. She crossed her first major line the morning she left a violation claiming I had oil spill hazards in my driveway. That would have required her to walk 15 feet onto my property. Except she didn't walk. She marched straight up the driveway, past the boundary markers, past the private property sign, right up to my garage door to take photos of a perfectly clean slab of concrete. When I confronted her, she didn't deny it. She smirked. HOA enforcement supersedes personal boundaries, she said. That sentence alone carried the weight of a home invasion. And for the first time, I saw something in her eyes that chilled me. Conviction. She believed she had authority over my home, over my belongings, over my life. And once someone believes they have that kind of power, their next step is always escalation. But that's not even the half of it. Karen's obsession became so consuming that she began recruiting neighbors to spy on me. She bribed them with promises of fine forgiveness and preferential treatment. She created a rumor loop designed to isolate me socially until she was the only voice anyone trusted. She told them I was dangerously unpredictable. She said my dog was a threat to the elderly. She even suggested to one neighbor that she had classified knowledge from the HOA files about my mental health. There were no such files. That was her fantasy. But her weaponization of imaginary authority was the final sign I needed. She wasn't just abusing power. She was building a campaign, a plan, a narrative she could use when she took her final swing. And the cliffhanger crept in like a shadow. The night she stood at the end of my driveway, watching my house silently for 5 full minutes, gripping something in her hand I couldn't identify from the window. She didn't move. She didn't speak. She simply stared, breathing heavily, like she was already imagining the moment she'd step onto my property and take what she wanted. That was the moment I realized this wasn't harassment. This wasn't an HOA dispute. This was a home invasion countdown, and she was the one setting the timer. I didn't wait for the HOA to save me. I didn't wait for the board to grow a spine. I didn't wait for Karen to slip up in public where someone else could finally see the monster she'd been nurturing behind that pastel smile. I treated the situation the way I'd treat a hostile zone: identify threats, collect intel, lock down vulnerabilities. The first step was upgrading my perimeter. Not with cheap doorbell cameras or fake security stickers, but with military-grade surveillance calibrated to catch movement, heat signatures, and timestamps accurate to the second. I installed triple coverage: garage, side entry, backyard, every angle mapped, every blind spot filled. And I didn't hide them. People like Karen think cameras are there for decoration. But my cameras weren't the kind she could wave at with smug entitlement. They were the kind that didn't blink, didn't look away, didn't miss a single trespassing violation. The emotional escalation struck the moment I reviewed my first night of footage. At 11:43 p.m., she appeared at the edge of my property. Karen, wearing black, hood up, flashlight pointed at my windows. She paced in slow, tight circles like she was memorizing my breathing patterns. She wasn't checking for noise violations. She wasn't verifying garage compliance. She was casing my home, mapping it, studying it. The next clip showed her returning at 5:07 a.m. She leaned toward my garage window, lips moving silently, whispering something I couldn't hear but didn't need to. Predators talk to themselves when the mask slips. This was no HOA enforcement. This was stalking. Her villain behavior upgraded again 2 days later when she approached my backyard gate. She pressed her hand on it, tested it, then pulled out her phone and took photos over the fence. That was the moment I felt the cold clarity I'd felt overseas. The clarity that tells you the threat isn't just escalating, it's preparing. That's when I initiated the authority beat. I printed the HOA's emergency key policy. Only board members could access the master key, and only during verified emergencies like flooding or fire. Any other use was criminal, a direct violation of state property laws, and something in my gut told me that key wasn't just sitting in the HOA lockbox. Something told me she already had it. I didn't know how right I was. Not yet. But I would. Here's where everything blew apart. The weekend I left town, I staged it deliberately. I loaded bags into the Honda. I left at a predictable time. I turned off the lights for the night. And I didn't check the cameras during my trip. I wanted her to think she had the perfect window. Predators can't resist openings. And when I returned Sunday night, the moment I stepped into the house, I could feel the air wasn't how I left it. The silence wasn't the silence I knew. It was the silence of intrusion. Something heavy. Something wrong. Something violated. When I opened the garage door and saw the carnage, the smashed hood, the shredded carbon fiber, the cratered windshield, that cold soldier's instinct didn't just wake up. It stood at full attention. I replayed the footage. And there she was, Karen, entering through the side door without force. No brake marks, no damage. She used a key. The HOA's master key. The one she should never have touched. The authority beat hit like a hammer when I checked the timestamps on the lock sensor logs. Someone accessed the emergency key cabinet at exactly 1:52 a.m. The footage from the HOA clubhouse, public record, showed her entering the room minutes earlier. She didn't break into my home. She walked into it with the entitlement of a dictator who believed my property was already hers. She spent nearly 20 minutes destroying the Lamborghini with a sledgehammer she hid under her hoodie. Every swing was intentional, every strike measured. She targeted specific components: hood, mirrors, windshield, panels, like she had studied the car's structure beforehand. She wasn't acting out of rage. She was performing. She wanted control. She wanted dominance. She wanted to break the symbol of my independence because she couldn't break me. When she finished, she stepped back, breathing heavily, admiring the ruin she created. and then she looked directly at the camera. She didn't know it was recording, but she smiled anyway. That smile wasn't insanity. It was ownership. It was entitlement. It was a woman convinced she had finally won. But that's not even the half of it. After calling 911 and securing the footage for evidence, I noticed something in the corner of the frame I hadn't seen before. Karen didn't just walk into the garage. She walked into the house. My house. She took 5 steps past the doorway and stood there, scanning the shadows like she was picturing where she'd go next. The footage showed her looking down the hallway, toward the living room, toward the bedrooms, toward the places where people sleep. The threat wasn't the sledgehammer. The threat was the intention. She didn't stop at property destruction. She wanted to explore. She wanted access. She wanted control inside the walls of my home. I zoomed in on her hands. She wasn't just holding the key. She was holding a second tool, a thin metal object, a door shim, used to wedge open interior doors quietly, used in break-ins, used to access rooms where someone might be hiding. She didn't just trespass. She prepared. She planned. She escalated. At 2:30 to 2 a.m., she left calmly, closing the door behind her like she was finishing a shift. No panic, no rush, no fear, not even a glance over her shoulder. That's the confidence of someone who believes no one will ever hold her accountable. When Officer Willow arrived, I watched that confidence drain from her face on the call he recorded. Her voice dripping with contempt as she mocked my car, mocked my service, mocked everything she had no right to touch. And when Willow revealed she was already on a recorded line, the mask didn't just crack. It shattered. But the real cliffhanger landed hours later when the police called back and said, "We found something in her belongings you need to see." That wasn't about the car. It wasn't about the hammer. It was something far more dangerous. Something that proved the attack wasn't impulsive. It was step 1. And she had already planned step 2. The neighborhood shouldn't have felt different the morning after her arrest, but it did. It felt hollow, stretched thin, like every house was holding its breath. People peeked through blinds they pretended not to adjust. Conversation stopped when I stepped outside. The air wasn't cold, but the silence was. And in the center of that silence sat the HOA, shaken, splintering, and desperate to pretend they hadn't empowered a suburban tyrant who'd finally escalated into a full-blown home-invading threat. Tom, the HOA president, approached me with the gait of a man walking toward punishment. His hands trembled around a manila folder. His eyes wouldn't stay still. When I opened the door for him, he stepped inside, but couldn't bring himself to sit. "John," he said, voice cracking under the weight of everything he'd allowed. We have a situation." I didn't answer. I let the silence push him forward. "Karen called the board from holding," he continued. "She's claiming you orchestrated everything, that you tricked her into the garage, that you staged the footage." I felt the shift. Not rage, not surprise, just confirmation of what I had always known about her. When parasites lose control, they rewrite reality. He swallowed hard, then added, "She also says you threatened her, that you're unstable, that you're dangerous because of your military background." There it was, the weapon she had sharpened for months. The rumor she seeded through the neighborhood finally bloomed into her last line of defense. "The board wants to meet," he said. "Tonight." "Good," I told him. "I want them to see the truth." That's not even the half of it. The meeting room at the community center buzzed with the kind of tension you only feel in courtrooms and confessionals. Folding chairs formed a crooked ring. Half the neighborhood showed up, some to watch, some to judge, some because they secretly hoped Karen was innocent. They needed to believe they hadn't just let a stalker run their lives for years. I walked in without speaking, without rushing, without apologizing for taking space. The room parted around me, not out of respect, but fear. Fear of the lies she'd been spoon-feeding them for months. Then the door slammed open behind me. Gasps rolled through the room. Karen entered like she wanted every eye on her. Neck brace, wrist brace, a dramatic limp that changed legs every few steps. Her lawyer, a man who smelled like overbilling, hovered close. She wasn't there to defend herself, she was there to perform. She took her seat across from me, lifted her chin with rehearsed fragility, and let out a shaky breath loud enough to reach every row. The board chair began the meeting, voice trembling like she was standing in front of an execution squad. We're here to discuss the allegations concerning Miss Whitmore and Mr. Davis. Call them felonies, I said. The lawyer leaned forward, smiling like he believed he'd already won. My client acted in self-defense, he said smoothly. She believed Mr. Davis was attempting to lure her into a dangerous situation. Several neighbors gasped, not at the accusation, at the audacity. The lawyer continued. Furthermore, we have reason to believe the footage submitted has been altered. It cannot be authenticated. I looked at Karen. She glanced down like she was trying to hide a smile. Then, like a spark hitting dry brush, the emotional escalation ignited. Play it, I said. The board chair wrung her hands. John, we're not sure it's appropriate to show graphic material. Graphic? My voice stayed flat. It's a garage, a car, and a woman with a hammer. Play it. We object, the lawyer snapped. The footage will prejudice the room. That's the point, I said. Truth usually does. The room stirred. Whispers, shifts, fear turning into suspicion. Karen broke first. Fake tears spilled from her eyes as she clutched her neck brace. He's threatening me right now, she sobbed. You all hear it. You all see it. He's intimidating me. He's unhinged. Her performance wasn't for the board. It was for the neighbors, for the cameras, for herself. She needed an audience to keep her fantasy alive. That was her power. Attention. The lawyer stood. Given Mr. Davis's documented military trauma, the room froze. Even the air stilled. I rose to my feet slowly, like a tide swelling. You don't get to weaponize my service, I said. Not here, not ever. The lawyer faltered. Karen's tears stopped instantly, and the board chair, shaking visibly, said, We will recess and review all materials privately. They stood to leave. That was when the doors opened again. Officer Martinez stepped inside, uniform crisp, expression unreadable. She carried an evidence bag in one hand. Mr. Davis? She asked. We need to speak. The room leaned toward her voice. Is this about the footage? Someone asked. No, she said. It's about what we found in Miss Whitmore's purse during intake. Karen stiffened. Her lawyer's face drained of color. Not here, he hissed. This is not appropriate. Martinez ignored him. She handed me the evidence bag. Inside was a planner. Pink, neon, identical to the fleck of nail polish stuck to my shattered headlight. The room fell silent as she gestured for me to open it. Page after page after page. My schedule, my routines. Notes about when I left the house, when Duke went outside, when the garage opened, when I slept. Notes marked, good time. Notes marked, weak spot. Notes marked, try again. And then, in red ink, underlined 3 times, remove the car, remove the problem, remove him next. The room erupted, gasps, shouts, chairs scraped back. Someone whispered, She planned it. She planned all of it. Karen's face contorted into something feral. That's not mine, she screamed. He planted it. He's framing me. He's dangerous. Her lawyer tried to calm her, but she erupted. He ruined everything. He thinks he's better than us. He needed to be put in his place. And just like that, she exposed herself. Not as a victim, not as a frightened neighbor, but as the tyrant she truly was. Officer Willow stepped in behind Martinez, cuffs ready. "Miss Whitmore," he said, "you are under arrest for felony stalking, illegal possession of a key, and violation of release conditions." "No!" she shrieked. "I am the HOA. You can't do this." But no one stood for her. Not one board member, not one neighbor, not one voice rose to defend the woman they once obeyed. The collapse was absolute. As they dragged her out screaming, her eyes locked on mine, full of hatred and the last flicker of delusion. "This isn't over," she hissed. But it was. The moment she crossed my threshold with that stolen key, her fate was sealed. She was finished. And the entire neighborhood watched her power dissolve into nothing. The night after they dragged Karen out of the community center, the neighborhood felt different again. Not quieter, not safer, but exposed. Like everyone finally realized how close they'd come to letting a clipboard tyrant turn Maple Ridge into her personal kingdom of fear. I didn't celebrate. I didn't sleep. I did what I've always done after a hostile encounter. Secure the perimeter, gather intel, and prepare the next move. People think retaliation is loud. It isn't. Real retaliation is silent, strategic, executed with precision so clean it leaves no room for misinterpretation. I sat at my dining table with every piece of evidence spread before me like battlefield intel. The pink planner with her deranged notes, the timestamps from the camera logs, the HOA policy she violated by stealing the emergency key, the footage of her pacing my yard at midnight, the shaky recordings of neighbors whispering about how she'd threatened them into silence, and the video, her full meltdown framed in the doorway of my garage, hammer in hand, smiling as she destroyed the Lamborghini. That evidence wasn't just proof, it was a map. A blueprint leading straight to the dismantling of everything she built her identity on. Here's where everything blew apart. Officer Martinez called at 9 the next morning to meet with me and the prosecutor. When I arrived, the energy in the room carried the weight of something official, something decisive. The prosecutor didn't bother with pleasantries. He had the pink planner in one hand and a printout of Karen's HOA access logs in the other. "Mr. Davis," he said, "her behavior wasn't just malicious. It was organized, calculated, predatory." He flipped the planner open to the page that had chilled the room the night before. Her handwriting circled in red ink looked deranged under the fluorescent lights. "Remove him next." "This doesn't read like someone enforcing community rules," he continued. "This reads like someone escalating toward a violent confrontation." The authority beat landed when he laid out the full list of charges she would face, now that the new evidence had surfaced. Stalking, burglary, illegal entry, felony vandalism, possession of criminal tools, harassment, abuse of HOA authority, attempted forced entry. And because she'd used a stolen HOA master key, the charges climbed higher. Tampering with secured property, breach of fiduciary duty, and unauthorized access to private residence. Her fantasy of untouchable authority had legally transformed her into a multi-count felon. I remained still as granite. No satisfaction, no outrage, just control. The prosecutor leaned forward. "We'll need you to testify," he said, calmly, factually. "If you stay steady, this case will crush her." That part, at least, required no effort. Meanwhile, the villain behavior upgraded again. Word spread that Karen was claiming I'd faked the planner, that I'd staged the footage, that I had been stalking her, that I intimidated the entire board. Every lie she'd ever crafted became her only shield, and she wrapped herself in them like armor made of wet tissue paper. But her collapse had already begun. Neighbors who once feared her now lined up outside the station to submit statements. One after another, they described how she monitored them, pressured them, threatened them with violations she invented. Some whispered, some shook, some cried. But they all spoke, and the narrative she tried to build crumbled under the weight of their truth. My retaliation wasn't revenge, it was exposure, surgical, precise. I presented copies of the HOA bylaws showing her overreach. I provided digital evidence of her falsified reports. I submitted timestamps of her stalking pattern for 3 months. Each piece dismantled her facade. Each fact erased a lie. Each truth cornered her further. But that's not even the half of it. When the prosecutor reviewed the footage of her entering my home, not just the garage, but those 5 steps past the doorway, his jaw tightened. "She was scouting interior access," he said. "This wasn't impulsive. This was escalation toward an in-person confrontation." The room fell silent. "She would have come back," Martinez said finally. "And next time she wouldn't have stopped with the car." That was the moment the battle shifted. It wasn't about saving a Lamborghini. It wasn't about ending HOA harassment. It was about stopping someone who had fixated on me with enough obsession to plan a break-in that could have ended with more than property damage. When the hearing date was announced, I walked into the HOA office one last time. The board froze the moment they saw me. Tom cleared his throat. "John, You empowered her," I said, voice flat. "You watched her cross lines for years, and you let her believe she owned this street." No one responded. No one defended themselves. No one had the courage to lift their head. Their silence was an admission. Their silence was humiliation. Their silence was the final verification that everything Karen became, they enabled. I leaned forward slightly. Those days are over. They didn't argue. They didn't push back. They didn't even pretend to salvage their authority. They backed down because they finally understood the difference between power and control. Karen had power. I had control. And when the court date arrived, that difference would become impossible to ignore. The courthouse hallway buzzed with the low hum of neighbors pretending not to stare at me as I walked past. Word had spread through Maple Ridge Estates like a shockwave, and now every resident who had once lived under Karen Whitmore's suffocating rule had shown up to witness the final collapse of the tyrant they once feared. The carpeting muted every footstep, but not the tension. It sat heavy in the air, thick as humidity before a storm. I stepped into the courtroom and saw her immediately. Karen sat hunched at the defense table, shoulders caved inward, her once perfect hair limp and colorless, her face a blotchy canvas of sleepless anxiety. She didn't look like a warden anymore. She didn't look like a ruler or a queen, or an HOA monarch swinging a clipboard like a weapon. She looked small. She looked crushed. She looked like someone who had finally realized that the universe she tried to dominate had closed in around her with the cold indifference of a steel trap. Her smirk was gone. Her delusion was gone. All that remained was the hollow fear of someone who knew she was about to be erased by consequences she thought she was untouchable to. The judge entered. The room rose. And the final battle began. The prosecutor's voice was controlled, steady, surgical. He laid out every violation, every escalation, every deranged step she took as she spiraled deeper into obsession. He described the stolen emergency key she used like a weapon. He described the stalking patterns. He described the garage attack, frame by frame, pausing long enough for the courtroom to hear the sickening crack of her sledgehammer hitting the Lamborghini's hood. Then he played the hallway footage. The moment she broke through my door, the moment she screamed, the moment she swung the hammer at my head, and the moment she fell under my weight as I disarmed her and held her down to keep her from killing both me and herself. The sound in the courtroom was silence, Absolute silence. Even the air seemed to stop moving. When the video ended, the prosecutor delivered the authority beat with the clean finality of a closing argument sharpened to a razor's edge. "Your Honor," he said, "this was not enforcement. This was not confusion. This was not an emotional outburst. This was a violent, premeditated campaign of harassment, intimidation, and attempted bodily harm, executed by a woman who believed that her HOA title made her immune to the law. The evidence is overwhelming. The danger she posed is undeniable. And the victim," he said, turning toward me for the briefest moment, "is alive today because of his training, not because she ever intended to stop." Karen's lawyer tried to speak, tried to frame her as stressed, overwhelmed, mentally fragile. But Karen shattered his entire argument herself when she suddenly stood up, voice cracking, shouting across the courtroom that I had provoked her, that I had humiliated her, that I had challenged her authority. The judge slammed her gavel once, then again, then again. "Sit down, Miss Whitmore," she commanded. But Karen didn't. She spiraled. She tore through every defense her attorney tried to build. Her rage erupted in real time, exposing the venom she once hid behind pastel sweaters and polite HOA emails. "He thinks he's better than everyone. He thinks rules don't apply to him. He thinks he can just move into my neighborhood and—" "Your neighborhood?" the judge interrupted sharply. Karen froze mid-sentence. "This is precisely the problem. You don't run a neighborhood. You don't own people. And you don't get to destroy a man's home, his car, or his peace because he didn't bow to your ego." Karen sat. She didn't speak again. The judge delivered the verdict like a blade coming down. 5 years total, combining the felony vandalism, illegal entry, attempted break-in, stalking, malicious destruction of property, abuse of HOA authority, and attempted assault with a deadly weapon. Mandatory psychiatric treatment. Full financial restitution, including the full repair cost of the Lamborghini, the home damage, and legal fees. Asset liquidation to satisfy the judgment. Her house, her savings, her HOA privileges. Everything she used as a shield was stripped from her with one ruling. When the bailiff cuffed her, her legs nearly buckled. She didn't look at me. Not once. The humiliation was complete. The war was over. Outside, the sunlight felt different, cleaner, sharper, real. Neighbors approached me not with fear, not with distance, but with relief. Tom shook my hand and apologized again. Sarah thanked me for exposing everything they were too scared to confront. The young couple who now lived in Karen's old house waved at me from their porch, happy, unburdened, unaware of the darkness that once lived behind their front door. When I returned home, my Lamborghini sat restored in the garage, a gleaming midnight blue monument to survival and precision. The engine purred like nothing had ever touched it. But on the wall beside it, I left one white patch of drywall unpainted. A scar. A reminder of what happens when control replaces fear, when discipline replaces rage, and preparation replaces panic. That night, Duke curled at my feet, breathing slow and steady. For the first time in months, the air in my home was quiet. Not the tense quiet of waiting for an attack, but the peaceful quiet of a man who fought back and won. People mistake revenge for violence. They mistake justice for fury. But real victory is colder than that. Real victory is walking through your home without watching shadows. Real victory is turning the key in your door without bracing your stance. Real victory is knowing the enemy can never return. Her smirk died. Her power died. Her empire died. But I'm still here. Breathing, living, driving, and sleeping with both eyes closed for the first time in a long time. The war ended not with fire, not with rage, but with silence, The kind of silence only victory can buy.